Hi everyone. Hi. Today's chapter will be talking about life processes, and in one shot we'll be completing the full chapter so that it becomes easier for you to do your preparations for the examination. So in this video we'll be covering the 4 life processes that is there in class 10th CBSE NCERT biology. The first processes will be nutrition and digestion, breathing, respiration, circulation and transportation, and finally giving out the waste products, that is excretion. So let's start with the first life processes, that is nutrition, and followed by digestion in both plants and animals. So nutrition is the primary role or the source which provides us with the energy to do all kind of work. The food that we eat helps us to provide us with the energy for work. Now, the process of taking in food is different in different organisms, or based on the process of how they take in their food, they have been classified into different forms. So, types of nutrition, that is heterotrophic and autotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic, we know, that is the organisms which does not or is not able to prepare their own food. Instead, they depend on other organisms for their food. And autotrophs, they are the ones which prepare their own food, and they are self-sufficient with the raw materials that they get from the nature. They prepare their own food and they keep themselves self-sufficient. So under heterotrophs, there are a huge number of organisms, or mostly all the organisms come under heterotrophs. It is only under the autotrophs, that is, the examples of autotrophs are the plants. So under heterotrophs, we have different forms of nutrition, that is saprophytes. They grow on the dead and decaying matter, so they can obtain the nutrition or the food from that of the dead matter, that is saprophytes, example of the fungus. The parasites, they live in outside or inside that of a living organism or a living body, and from that they obtain nutrition. So this is also another form. Next is holozoic. So that format is, we human beings come under the holozoic form of nutrition, or we have the holozoic form of nutrition, where we take in the food, we digest the food, then the digested food is passed on to the different parts of the body, and finally the waste is given out. So that forms the holozoic mode of nutrition. And finally the symbiotic organisms, which live on a host plant, and they both maintain a symbiotic relationship, that is, they both help each other in their life process or the life maintenance. They take nutrition and obviously they provide other things in order to maintain a balance. So these are the different types of heterotrophic or heterotrophic mode of nutrition followed by the organisms. So coming on to the autotrophs, that is the plants which prepare their own food, and the process through which they prepare their own food is known as photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, how does it happen? In the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide, water and minerals from the roots as well as sunlight, they produce sugar or glucose in the form of C6H12O6 and give out oxygen and water into the atmosphere. So this is the only organism which gives out oxygen, because all living organisms take in oxygen during the process of breathing, and plants also take in oxygen during the process of breathing, but only during the process of photosynthesis they give out oxygen, and during the course of photosynthesis they prepare their own food, and so they are known as the autotrophs. Next, coming on to the amoeba, which follow a holozoic mode of nutrition. I told you that we human beings also follow the holozoic mode of nutrition, but even the amoeba, the single cellular organism or single cellular protozoa which also follows a holozoic mode of nutrition. So what are the different steps for holozoic mode of nutrition? First is ingestion, that is taking in of the food. Next is digestion, that is digesting the food that has been ingested. Third is absorption, that is absorbing of the food that has been digested or the digested food is absorbed. And assimilation, that is spreading or it is distributing of this digested food to different parts of the body. And finally egestion, that is giving out of the undigested, unwanted food outside from that of the body. So even the same process is followed by human beings also. In amoeba, being a unicellular organism, it is a very simple process, but we being a complex multicellular organism, our process is a little bit a complex process. So for what happens, it is the nucleus. The amoeba, a single cell organism, it spots a food particle or it locates a food particle, and then the amoeba produces or made two finger-like projections which are known as pseudopodia, which goes and engulfs this food particle. Once this food particle is engulfed, slowly it is taken inside the body of amoeba. So this first process involves is the ingestion. Then second, third and fourth is the process of digestion. After the food is digested, it is taken in and slowly this food is absorbed by the body and finally assimilated throughout the cell, so that each and every part of the cell receives the nutrition, and finally the undigested part or undigested food is given out through the process of digestion. So this completes the whole cycle of holozoic mode of nutrition found in amoeba. Next we move on to the process of digestion that happens in human beings. So human beings, I told you, being a multicellular organism, the process is a little bit complex. So let's understand how exactly the process of digestion takes place in human beings. So the first, we take the food and put it into our mouth, that is the buccal cavity. So the buccal cavity is the first part of the digestive system in human beings. So secretes an enzyme called the salivary amylase. This helps in breaking down of the carbohydrates into simpler molecules. Now once this carbohydrate is broken down, but mind it, it is not the complete digestion that has been happened. So it is just the food particles have been broken down due to the presence of the salivary amylase, and then it moves through the esophagus and comes into the stomach. So stomach is a muscular bag like structure which secretes different juices which helps in the process of digestion. So what are the enzymes that is secreted in the stomach? That is, first is the HCl or the hydrochloric acid that is secreted, pepsin, and finally mucus. The hydrochloric acid present helps to activates the enzyme pepsin, and it also helps in destroying or killing of the germs that might have entered along with the food into the stomach or into the person's body. And finally the mucus, this provides or makes or contributes to an inner lining of the stomach in order to protect the stomach from the action of the hydrochloric acid, because hydrochloric acid is an acid, it might cause the inner walls of the stomach to corrode. So it helps or it prevents that from happening. So here the first, in the buccal cavity there was breakdown of the carbohydrate molecules, and in the stomach there was breakdown of the protein molecules. Then the food moves on to the small intestine, which is the largest or which is a huge network of tube. Now small intestine, along with the small intestine there are other organs which secretes their secretions into the small intestine, that is liver and the pancreas. The liver secretes the bile juice, whereas pancreas secretes the pancreatic juices, along with the intestinal juices. All helps in the digestion of the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the emulsification of fats taking place. So it is the trypsin, that is a protein digestion enzyme, lipase, a fat digestion enzyme, they are all secreted into the small intestine, which helps in the final digestion of the food. Now, after the food has been finally digested in the small intestine, it is moved or it is absorbed into the bloodstream. So first ingestion we have done, this involved the process of digestion. After digestion, the absorption of the digested food takes place through the blood capillaries and the small finger-like projections that is there inside the small intestine, which is known as the villi. This helps in the absorption of the digested food into the bloodstream. Now, after this digestion has happened or the absorption of this food has happened, this food is taken by the blood to different parts of the body, and that is the process happen. So all the food is reached to every part of the body, and this is what it happens in the small intestine. That is, the carbohydrates in presence of salivary amylase or in the presence of the salivary amylase in buccal cavity, it is broken down into glucose. The proteins is broken down with the help of the enzyme pepsin and trypsin into amino acids, and the fats with the bile and the lipase enzymes are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol. This is the final breakdown of the food that takes place through the process of digestion. After the digestion has taken place, the absorption has taken place, then what happens? Now the food that has not been digested or which was not required by the body moves on to the large intestine, Now when it moves on to the large intestine, there the food is excreted out or given out through the process of egestion. So excess water is reabsorbed and the undigested food is given out through the anus, and this completes the process of digestion. So this completes the process of digestion and also helps us to understand one of the important life processes, that is digestion. Let's move on to the second life processes, that is respiration. This is also very important because living things need to breathe, need to respire. So what happens during the process of breathing and respiration? So it is the glucose that has been formed in the previous life processes, that is during the process of digestion, it combines with oxygen and releases energy along with carbon dioxide and water. So when the glucose is combined with oxygen, it releases a huge amount of energy in the form of ATP along with carbon dioxide and water. This energy that is released during the process of breakdown of glucose along with oxygen is used for other various life activities, that is the maintenance, repair and the growth activities of the body. So the formula stands as C6H12O6, that is the glucose plus 6O2 oxygen gives rise to 6CO2, that is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide with 6 molecules of water. Now what we have discussed is the process of respiration. Now there are two types of respiration. The previous one which I just discussed is in the presence of oxygen and it is known as a aerobic respiration. And another form of respiration which involves the absence or which does not involve the presence of oxygen is called the anaerobic respiration. Now in anaerobic respiration also glucose is broken down, but in the absence of oxygen, so it gives lactic acid and energy. This energy, the amount of energy that is released during anaerobic respiration is much less than that which is respirated or which is given during aerobic respiration. So this is the steps in respiration, or this is the fate of the energy or what amount of energy is released during the process of respiration. Let's have a look or understand exactly what happens. So the glucose that is formed during the process of digestion it is broken down into a 3-carbon compound known as the pyruvate in the cytoplasm of every cell. So the glucose is broken down into pyruvate, a 3-carbon compound in the cytoplasm of every cell. Now this particular carbon, a pyruvate, is again broken down, or it releases energy in different forms depending on the absence or the presence of oxygen. Now pyruvate, in the absence of oxygen in yeast, it produces ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. That is a 2-carbon molecule. And when there is a lack, when you don't have that amount of oxygen required, the glucose molecule is broken down in the lack of oxygen and it releases lactic acid plus energy. And finally, in the presence of oxygen, that happens in mitochondria of the cells, and it gives out carbon dioxide, water and energy. So in yeast, when there is no oxygen, it gives out ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. In muscle cells, where there is no oxygen or there is lack of oxygen, it gives, the glucose is broken down into lactic acid plus energy. And finally, in the mitochondria, where there is presence of oxygen, the glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide, water and energy. And even we told that not only human beings, all living beings respire. So even the plants also respire. So during the day, it is the oxygen that is given out during the process of photosynthesis, and carbon dioxide is taken in for photosynthesis or preparation of glucose. During the night, when there is no sunlight, so there is no process of photosynthesis. So the oxygen that is there in the atmosphere, that is again taken up by the plants in order for cellular respiration, and carbon dioxide is given out and glucose is used up during this process. This process is also very much similar to that of the process of breathing, respiration that we also, or we human beings, follow. Exchange that takes place in the fishes. Now this gaseous exchange happens in the water. The water contains of oxygen, which is taken up by the gills of the fishes, and these fishes or these gills take in the oxygen, and the water through the mouth is taken in and it passes through the gills. The gills absorbs the oxygen and the water is given out. So this is also a method followed through the process of respiration in fishes. Then it is the breathing in humans. Because I told you that in life processes there are 2 important processes, that is breathing and respiration. So we have understood the process of respiration, that is the breaking down of the energy or glucose in order to release energy. But during the process of breathing, this is what happens during the process of breathing. That is, first, due to inhalation or for taking in of the air, the diaphragm contracts and it moves down. So when the diaphragm moves down, the lungs increases in volume. What happens? Due to the excessive volume, air comes inside, or air travels inside through the nose and the pharynx, the larynx, and it comes into the lungs. There the exchange of gases takes place. So the oxygen is taken in and the air containing the carbon dioxide is given out. While giving out, that is the process of exhalation. Again, the diaphragm relaxes and the volume decreases. So what happens? The air is pushed out of the nostrils containing carbon dioxide, and so the air is given out through the process of exhalation. This is very simple, and it is a process of inhalation and exhalation which combined together is known as the process of breathing, which takes place or which happens in human beings. Now I told you that the exchange of gases takes place. So let's understand how this exchange of gases takes place during the process of breathing. So the air enters through the nasal cavity, it moves through the pharynx, larynx and comes into the trachea. And the trachea then divides into 2 stem-like structures, and which again branches into the bronchi, which further branches into bronchioles, secondary bronchioles, and then those bronchioles end up into small sac-like structure consisting of blood capillaries, which is known as the alveoli. This alveoli consists of the blood capillaries. It is all surrounded by the blood capillaries because there the exchange of gases takes place. So whatever the alveoli takes in the oxygen, that is taken up by the blood, which remains surrounded, the blood capillaries which remain surrounded the alveoli, so that the blood gets oxygen. So the oxygenated blood is taken up and it is taken to different parts of the body. So this diagram is important along with the labeling, that is nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea. This is the diaphragm, primary bronchus, secondary bronchus, tertiary bronchus, and bronchiole. This is the terminal bronchiole which ends up into the alveoli. Next, we move on to this process of, or the third process of life processes, that is transportation and circulation. Transportation, as the name suggests, we can understand it is the process in which things or materials are transported to different parts of the body. Because this is very important, because some of the activities like respiration, digestion takes place at a particular site. Now the total body has to receive it in order to function properly. So this is done by the process of transportation. Now transportation, as it is important in humans, so also it is important in the plants. It helps in taking up of the water and the minerals by the root, and also transportation of the prepared food from the leaves to different parts of the body. There are designated tubes for carrying of this water and minerals, that is the xylem, and carrying of the prepared food, that is the phloem, which takes it to different parts of the body. So this is also a method, or this is also a mode of transportation which is followed by the plants. Now, when we talk of transportation, who actually does the work of transporting? Who actually transports this glucose, the energy, the oxygen, or the digested food? Who transports that? It is the blood that does the work of transportation. Blood constitutes of different types of cells in the body, or constitute different types of cells. So blood constitutes of the red blood cells, or the RBC, which carries the oxygen. It constitutes the WBC, and WBC again constitutes of the basophil, neutrophil, eosinophil, monocyte and lymphocyte, because all of these constitute the white blood cells, and these are for the defense mechanism of the body. They protect the body from any foreign particles or any foreign invasion. And finally, the blood platelets, which is small structures which is present in the blood, and it helps in the clotting of the blood. And all of these remain suspended in a fluid-like material which is known as the plasma. So all of them constitute the blood, which is the only mode of transportation in human body. Now let's have a look how the heart works, or how the working or the procedure of how the oxygenated blood is carried to different parts of the body. The deoxygenated is brought, it is again oxygenated and taken for the different parts of the body. So this is how it works. So the oxygenated blood enters into the left atrium. From the lungs, it enters into the left atrium and it moves through a bicuspid valve, or known as the mitral valve, and it moves to the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, it moves out through this tube and it goes to different parts of the body. And the deoxygenated blood, that is the blood which does not contain the oxygen, is brought and taken, which is brought from different parts of the body, is put into this, and this is known as the vena cava, and there are two vena cava, that is the inferior and the superior vena cava. The inferior vena cava brings the deoxygenated blood from different parts or the lower portions of a body, whereas the superior vena cava brings blood from the superior or the upper portions of the body, that is the heart, the lungs, the brain, from the top portions of the body. And so the deoxygenated blood enters through the vena cava, and it reaches here, that is the right atrium. When it reaches the right atrium, there is again a valve opening over here, you can see. So this is known as the tricuspid valve. This is the bicuspid or the mitral valve, and this is called the tricuspid valve. From the tricuspid valve, it moves into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it goes and it is taken to the lungs for oxygenation process. So because there is two types of blood flowing into the heart without getting mixed up, this particular process of circulation of blood is known as double circulation. Here it is the flow of the oxygenated blood, that is from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and from the right atrium to the right ventricle, it is the flow of the deoxygenated blood, as it takes place simultaneously in 2 or in 4 chambers without mixing. So it is also known as the process of double circulation. So this is the schematic mode or schematic representation of the process of double circulation. You can see this is the lungs, which gives in the oxygenated blood, the pulmonary vein, oxygenated blood enters the left atrium, which I showed you, and it moves through the right ventricle, through the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve, and from the right ventricle it comes out main artery, that is the aorta, taking to all the different parts of the organs of the body. After from here, the deoxygenated blood, or after using the oxygen in the blood, the deoxygenated blood comes in through the vena cava and enters into the right atrium. It flows from the right atrium into the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve, and then again it comes out through the pulmonary artery. It is taken into the lungs for the process of oxygenation. So this gives a schematic representation of how the blood flows in through the heart, the lungs, and different parts of the body. And I told you about double circulation. This gives us the idea of the lymphatic vessels. So we know that when the blood flows in through the capillaries or the vein, it flows at a very high speed. Now when this flow is happening at a very high speed, sometimes what happens, small amount of blood, or along with the blood, it oozes out or comes out through the openings or small openings which is present in the blood capillaries and comes out of the arteries. Now these all small particles or the blood remains, which comes out, starts flowing, or it remains scattered within the tissue because they have oozed out from the capillaries. Now what happens, these lymphatic vessels, these collect all the fluid which has come out from the or oozed out from the capillaries, and again they are taken in, and through the lymphatic node, lymphatic trunk, they are taken and they are put into the veins, which is finally carried to the heart, so that nothing goes waste and there is no wastage of any of the material that comes out from the veins. So this is a detail, gives about an idea of what happens for the lymphatic vessels. If you need to understand more, in the previous videos of my life processes, we have discussed it in detail of what happens, how it works, the lymphatic vessels, so you can have an idea for the same. Next, we move on to the process of transportation that happens in plants. I told you that plants, even plants, also have capillaries type thing to carry on the minerals, the water minerals, and also the prepared food. Next, it is the transportation that happens in the plants. I've already told that the transportation in plants also take place through specific tubes known as the xylem and the phloem. The xylem takes in the water and the minerals from the roots to the leaves for the process of photosynthesis, whereas the phloem carries the prepared food or the final product from the leaves to the different parts of the body. So this takes place, or the movement of the xylem or the phloem takes place due to the root pressure and process of transpiration, which is very important for the process of transportation in plants. So exactly how the process or how phloem translocates the food, let us have a look of it. So the first thing, what happened, the water absorbed from the nearby cells of the increased hydrostatic pressure in the mesophyll cells. So the water flows in through the xylem tubes or the xylem vessel, and what happens, the leaves prepares the glucose or the sucrose in the form of final product of photosynthesis, which seeps in into the companion cells and comes and seeped in into the phloem tubes. Now, due to the presence of the sucrose or the glucose, there the water concentration decreases as the solute concentration increases. So water from the xylem flows into the phloem, and due to this flow, it puts a pressure, and so the prepared food or the final product of photosynthesis, it is translocated in from the phloem to different parts of the plants where the food needs to be relocated. And so once this is done, or the food has been relocated, there is not much food left in the phloem or the companion cells and the sieve tubes in order to seep in into the phloem. So that time what happens, again the water concentration increases because the solute concentration has already decreased. So water from the phloem passes on into the xylem, and this process carries out in order for the translocation of food through the phloem tubes. So this is a diagrammatic representation. If you want to go through, you can have a look at the steps and you can understand it more vividly and more descriptively as how phloem transfers the food from the leaves to different parts of the body. Then finally we come on to the final life processes, that is the process of excretion. So after the process of digestion, have taken the food, the energy and all that, we get to understand that wastage is created. Waste materials is created, and waste materials needed to be given out so that the body maintains, our body is clean enough. So waste products are given out through the process of excretion. Excretion in humans and excretion in plants in different formats. So how does excretion in humans takes place? The excretion in humans not only involves the kidney or the excretory system, but it also involves the lungs, which gives out the carbon dioxide as an excretory material, the skin, which gives out sweat as an excretory material, that is in the form of water, salt and urea, and liver, which gives out the excess of ammonia, and obviously urine, which is excreted out by the excretory system. So all this constitutes to the excretory system of the human beings. Now this is the urine secretion or the mode of excretion in human beings, consisting of two kidneys or a pair of kidneys which are connected by a pair of ureter which comes and connects into the bladder. The bladder consists of the urethra from where the urine is given out, and it consists of the aorta carrying the oxygenated blood and the vena cava carrying the deoxygenated blood. This is the renal vein and this is the renal artery. So the renal vein carries the deoxygenated blood, whereas the renal artery carries the oxygenated blood. So each of this kidney, this is a kidney, and each of this kidney has innumerable number of small units which is known as the nephrons. Now these nephrons are the unit of process of urine formation. Now how does the process of urine formation takes place in the nephron? there are actually three different ways of the formation of urine. But in this diagram of nephron, what is important? First important is the glomerulus, which is contained in the Bowman's capsule, the proximal convoluted tubule, the renal or the distal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, the Bowman's capsule, and these are mostly the important ones when we are drawing a nephron. Now let's see how the urine is created or urine is produced through the process of excretion. So what happens? The first step is the glomerular filtration. So the blood constituting the waste products or containing the waste products is comes into the glomerulus, which is a fine network of blood capillaries. Then what happens? The filtrates or whichever is not required, the excretory material or the material which is not required by the body anymore, is taken out or it is separated out from the blood, and it is passed into the proximal convoluted tubule or the PCT. So it passes on to the proximal convoluted tubule. When it is passing on to the proximal convoluted tubule, it is moving through it. There is another process taking place, that is the process of tubular reabsorption. In the tubular reabsorption, what happens? The body thinks, our body has this tendency that it might be so, while process of filtration, glomerular filtration, important things or important products have been given out or been taken out from the blood, some of which might be required or necessary for the body. So again a refiltration takes place or process of reabsorption takes place. So some of the materials which have been given out through the process of glomerular filtration is been taken in, and it is then again sent out for being eliminated. Now again when it is goes, there is again a tubular secretion. Tubular secretion is, this is again a final mode of secretion, where again a final mode of separation takes place, where new things, that is the blood has brought, which might not have been removed during glomerular filtration, is again removed out from the body. And finally the waste which has been filtered and refiltered has been produced. It mixes with the water depending upon how much water is required by the body or present in the body. It mixes with the water and the urine is produced, which goes and collects in the collecting duct, and mainly it goes into the uterus, and finally it goes and gets collected in the urinary bladder. Now when the bladder is full, we get a signal in order to pass the urine or give out the urine, and the waste products along with the urine is given out. So this concludes us through the processes of life processes, as in the 4 life processes from the chapter life process, which includes the process of digestion, breathing, respiration, circulation or transportation, and finally the process of excretion. In one slot we have finished the full chapter. If you still need to understand or need to understand anything in a better manner or in a more detailed manner, so you can refer to my previous videos where I have done this process or the chapter life processes in 3-4 different videos. In one video I have covered only one processes and I have done it in huge detail, so you can refer to those videos. But this I've covered the whole chapter in one shot. So if you have liked my video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any queries, any doubts, any questions, please put into the comment box. I'll surely come back to you. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and please let me know the comments of how you are liking my videos or any suggestions for my videos. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you.